4 true creepy McDonald's stories. Story 1, The PlayPlace. My name is Gregory, and I was 34 years old when this happened. I was at a McDonald's in suburban Kansas City, Missouri, with my 5-year-old son Ethan on a Saturday afternoon in mid-October. The weather had turned cold and rainy, so I decided to let him burn off some energy in the indoor play place, while I sat at a table nearby drinking coffee and scrolling through my phone. It was around 2:30 p.m, and there were maybe 6 or 7 other kids climbing through the tubes and sliding down the slides. Everything was completely normal, until Ethan came down the slide crying, saying there was a man inside the tunnels who told him he had candy. Before I continue, make sure you hit subscribe and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from, because what happened in that play place is something every parent needs to hear. The McDonald's was one of those newer locations with a large indoor play area, the kind with the enclosed plastic tubes and tunnels that wind around about 15 feet above the ground. There was a ball pit at the bottom, a couple of slides, and that mesh netting that lets parents see their kids from certain angles, but not others. The whole structure was maybe 30 feet wide and 20 feet deep, big enough for a dozen kids to play without bumping into each other. I had brought Ethan here a few times before. He loved it. He would climb up into the tubes and disappear for 20 minutes at a time, popping up in the little plastic windows every now and then to wave at me. It gave me a chance to relax, check emails, just have a few minutes of quiet while he played. That Saturday, the play place was moderately busy. A birthday party was happening at the tables nearby. Maybe 8 or 9 kids, all running around in various states of sugar-induced chaos. There were a few other parents scattered at tables doing what I was doing, keeping half an eye on the structure while enjoying a moment of peace. Ethan had been playing for about 20 minutes when he came down the slide. He was not laughing or smiling like he usually did. He was crying, that scared kind of crying that tells you something is actually wrong, not just a bumped knee or a stolen toy. I jumped up and went to him, knelt down to his level, asked him what happened. He was having trouble getting the words out between sobs. Finally, he said there was a man in the tunnels. A man who told him he had candy in his pocket and asked if Ethan wanted to see it. My blood went cold. I asked Ethan to show me where. He pointed up at the tunnels toward a section in the back corner that was harder to see from the seating area. I told him to stay right there, right at the bottom of the slide. Do not move. I walked to the base of the play structure and looked up. The tubes were opaque-colored plastic, impossible to see through. I could hear kids playing, laughing, moving around, but I could not see into the back section where Ethan had pointed. I did something that probably was not smart, but I was not thinking clearly. I was angry and scared and operating on pure parental instinct. I started climbing into the structure. These play places are not designed for adults. The tubes are maybe 3 feet in diameter, barely big enough for me to crawl through on my hands and knees. But I squeezed in and started making my way toward the back corner. The inside smelled like feet and plastic and spilled soda. The sounds echoed strangely, kids' voices bouncing off the curved walls. I passed a couple of children who looked at me with confusion, probably wondering why a grown man was crawling through their play structure. I told them to go down the slide to get out, but I do not know if they listened. I reached the back section, a junction where 3 tubes came together with a small open area in the middle. And there he was, a man, probably mid-40s, heavy set, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. He was sitting in the junction area, knees pulled up to his chest to fit in the small space. He had something in his hand, something small and colourful that he was turning over in his fingers. He looked at me. His expression did not change. He did not look surprised or scared or guilty. He just looked at me with these flat, empty eyes like I was a minor inconvenience. I told him to get out. I said it loud enough that people below would hear. I told him the police were being called and he needed to get out of the structure right now. He smiled. That smile is something I will never forget. It was the smile of someone who had done this before, who knew how to handle this situation, who was not afraid. He said I was overreacting. He said he was just playing with the kids. He said there was no law against being in a play area. I screamed for someone to call 911. I screamed it at the top of my lungs, my voice echoing through the plastic tubes. Below me, I could hear commotion, parents grabbing their kids, employees running over. The man started moving, not toward me, but toward one of the other tubes, heading for a different exit point. I tried to follow, but he was faster than me in the confined space, more practiced at navigating the twists and turns. By the time I got out of the structure, he was already pushing through the emergency exit at the back of the PlayPlace. The alarm started blaring. I ran after him, but by the time I got outside, he was gone. The parking lot behind the restaurant connected to a strip mall with multiple exits. He could have gone anywhere. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. They took statements from me, from Ethan, from other parents and employees. Several other children reported that the same man had talked to them in the tunnels. He had been in there for at least 30 minutes before Ethan came down crying. 30 minutes of access to children while their parents sat nearby completely unaware. The police reviewed the security cameras. They got a clear shot of his face when he entered the restaurant, but the PlayPlace itself had no interior cameras. He had walked in, ordered a coffee, sat at a table for a few minutes, then casually climbed into the play structure when no employees were watching. They identified him 2 days later from the footage. His name was something I do not want to remember. He was a registered sex offender from another state who had violated his parole by traveling across state lines. He had a history, a long documented history of targeting children in public places. They caught him a week later at a Chuck E. Cheese about 50 miles away. Same routine. Coffee waiting, then climbing into a play area full of children. This time, an employee noticed and called police before he could get away. He is in prison now. Multiple charges. He will not be getting out for a very long time. But I think about that day constantly. I think about how I sat there drinking coffee, scrolling through my phone, assuming my son was safe, because he was in a bright, public, family-friendly space. I think about the other parents doing the same thing. I think about how easy it was for that man to walk, in order a coffee, and gain access to a dozen children. Ethan doesn't remember much about that day, which I am grateful for. He's 8 now, and does not like indoor play areas anymore. He says they make him feel weird. I have never pushed him to explain why. I do not take him to play places anymore. I do not trust them. The tubes are too easy to hide in. The structures are too complicated for parents to monitor. And the people who want to hurt children know this. They know exactly which spaces give them access and cover. If you have kids and you take them to these places, please watch them. Do not assume they are safe because they are in a family restaurant. Do not assume someone else is monitoring the play area. Do not assume that because a space is designed for children, only safe people will enter it. The monsters know where the children play, and sometimes they climb right in and wait. Story 2. The Overnight Shift. My name is Isaiah, and I was 21 years old when this happened. I was working the overnight shift at a 24-hour McDonald's in Bakersfield, California, handling the drive-thru and front counter from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It was a Tuesday night in early January, around 3:15 in the morning, when a woman came to the front door and started pounding on the glass. The dining room was closed for the night drive-thru only, but she was screaming for help, begging us to let her in. When I unlocked the door and she stumbled inside, I saw the blood on her face and the terror in her eyes. And I knew that whoever had done this to her was probably still out there, probably close, probably watching. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because what happened over the next hour is something that still wakes me up at night. The McDonald's I worked at was on a busy street during the day, but at night the area got quiet. We were one of the few businesses open past midnight, which meant we got a strange mix of customers. Truckers passing through people, getting off late shifts, drunks looking for food after the bars closed. Most nights were uneventful, but every now and then something would happen that reminded you how vulnerable you were sitting in that little building in the middle of the night, with the whole dark city around you. That Tuesday started normally. I was working with 2 other people. Maria, a woman in her 50s who handled the grill, and a kid named Tyler, who was maybe 18, working the fry station. The night manager was a guy named Robert, who spent most of his time in the back office doing paperwork. 4 people total to run the whole restaurant. By 3 a.m., we had not had a customer in almost 45 minutes. I was leaning against the counter, fighting to stay awake, watching the empty parking lot through the front windows. The dining room lights were dimmed chairs stacked on the tables, that weird late-night quiet that makes every sound seem louder than it should be. That is when I heard the pounding. Someone was hitting the front door hard with their palm or fist. I looked over and saw a woman standing outside the glass door. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with long dark hair that was tangled and messy. She was wearing a thin dress, no jacket, completely inappropriate for the January night. And there was blood on her face, a lot of it coming from somewhere on her forehead, running down her cheek. She was screaming, "Let me in, please, he is coming, please let me in." I did not hesitate. I ran to the door and unlocked it. She practically fell inside, stumbling, catching herself on a table. I locked the door behind her immediately. Up close, I could see how bad she looked. The cut on her forehead was deep, still bleeding. Her arms had bruises on them, finger-shaped bruises, like someone had grabbed her hard. Her feet were bare and dirty, like she had been running on the street. I asked her what happened, who did this to her. She was shaking so hard she could barely speak. She kept looking at the windows, at the dark parking lot outside, like she expected someone to appear at any moment. She said his name was David. She said he was her boyfriend. She said he'd been drinking and got angry and things got out of control. She said she ran out of the apartment and just kept running until she saw the McDonald's lights. I told Maria to call 911. I grabbed some napkins and pressed them against the cut on her forehead, trying to stop the bleeding. Tyler brought her a cup of water. We sat her down at one of the tables and waited for the police. About 5 minutes later, a car pulled into the parking lot. It was not a police car. It was a pickup truck, dark-coloured, pulling into a spot near the front door. A man got out. The woman made a sound, a whimper of pure terror, and shrank back in her chair. She said, "That is him. That is David." He was tall, maybe 6'2", with a shaved head, and a build that suggested he spent a lot of time in a gym. He was wearing a tank top despite the cold, and I could see tattoos covering both arms. He walked toward the front door with a stride that was not hurried, but not casual either. Purposeful, like he knew exactly what he was doing. He tried the door. It was still locked from when I let the woman in. He pulled on it, rattled it, then looked through the glass at us. His eyes found the woman immediately. Then they moved to me. He said through the glass that he just wanted to talk to his girlfriend. He said there had been a misunderstanding. He said if I let him in, we could sort this all out. I told him the police were on their way. I told him he needed to leave. His expression changed. The fake calm disappeared, and something else came through. Rage. Pure, undiluted rage. He started pounding on the door harder than the woman had hard enough that I was afraid the glass might break. He was screaming now, calling her names, calling me names, threatening what he would do when he got inside. The woman was sobbing, curled up in her chair, making herself as small as possible. Robert came out from the back, drawn by the noise. He took one look at the situation and pulled out his phone to call 911 again to tell them to hurry. The man stopped pounding. He stepped back from the door, breathing hard, looking at us through the glass. Then he turned and walked back to his truck. For a moment, I thought he was leaving. I thought the threat of police had worked and he was going to drive away. Instead, he opened the door of his truck and reached inside. When he stood up, he was holding a tire iron. He walked back toward the front door, tire iron swinging at his side. Robert yelled for everyone to get to the back of the restaurant. Tyler and Maria grabbed the woman and started pulling her toward the kitchen. I backed away from the door, but I could not stop watching. He swung the tire iron at the glass. The first hit cracked it. A spiderweb of fractures spreading across the door. The second hit punched a hole through, sending glass fragments scattering across the floor. He reached through the hole and started trying to unlock the door from the inside. I ran. We all crowded into the back office, the small room where Robert did his paperwork. Robert locked the door and pushed a filing cabinet against it. We could hear the man in the restaurant, now knocking things over, screaming the woman's name, searching for her. The police arrived, maybe 3 minutes later, though it felt like an hour. We heard the sirens, then shouting, then what sounded like a struggle, then, finally, quiet. An officer knocked on the office door and told us it was safe to come out. They had him in handcuffs in the parking lot, face down on the asphalt. 3 officers holding him down while a 4th read him his rights. The woman was taken to the hospital. The cut on her forehead needed stitches, but otherwise she would recover physically. The mental recovery I knew would take much longer. I gave a statement to the police. We all did. The front door was shattered glass everywhere, the whole front of the restaurant, looking like a crime scene. The store had to close for the rest of the night, while a crew came to board up the entrance. The man, David, was charged with assault, domestic violence, vandalism, and a bunch of other things. I heard later that he had a record prior arrests for similar incidents, a pattern of violence that the woman had been trapped in for almost 2 years. I thought about her a lot in the weeks after. I thought about how she ran barefoot through the streets in January, bleeding, looking for somewhere safe. I thought about how the only light she could find at 3 a.m. was a McDonald's. And I thought about how close he came to getting inside. If I had been slower to lock the door after she came in, if the glass had shattered sooner, if the police had taken another 5 minutes, everything could have been different. I quit that job about a month later, not because of that night specifically, but because I could not shake the feeling of vulnerability. The overnight shift, the empty parking lot, the glass walls that anyone could see through, that anyone could break through. I felt exposed every time I stood behind that counter. I work in a warehouse now. No customers, no windows, no one trying to break in at 3 a.m. It suits me better. But I think about that woman sometimes. I hope she got away from him for good. I hope she found somewhere safe, someone who treats her right. A life where she does not have to run barefoot through the night, looking for help. And I think about all the other people out there trapped in situations like hers, looking for a way out. Sometimes a fast food restaurant at 3 a.m. is the only option they have. Sometimes the kid behind the counter is the only person standing between them and the monster chasing them. If you work late nights anywhere, please pay attention. Please be ready to help. Please be ready to lock that door and call for help. Because you never know who might be running toward your lights, looking for safety with something terrible right behind them. Story 3. The Highway Stop. My name is Garrett, and I was 29 years old when this happened. I was driving from Phoenix to Dallas for a family emergency, a 16-hour trip that I decided to do in one straight shot to get there as fast as possible. It was around 1:45 a.m., and I was somewhere in the New Mexico desert, exhausted and struggling to stay awake, when I pulled off the interstate to get coffee at McDonald's attached to a truck stop. The parking lot was almost empty. Just a few semis, a couple of cars, and one vehicle that I would learn to recognize far too well over the next 30 minutes. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what happened at that truck stop is a warning to anyone who travels alone at night. The drive had been brutal. I left Phoenix around 7 p.m., thinking I could push through and make it to Dallas by early afternoon the next day. My father had suffered a heart attack and was in critical condition. Every hour mattered. I was not going to stop any longer than absolutely necessary. By midnight, I had been driving for 5 hours, and the fatigue was setting in hard. The New Mexico desert at night is hypnotic, just endless darkness, and the white lines of the highway stretching ahead forever. I found myself drifting, jerking awake, when my tires hit the rumble strips on the side of the road. I needed caffeine badly. I saw the exit sign for a truck stop and took it. The McDonald's was the only thing open. At that hour, a small restaurant attached to a gas station and convenience store. The parking lot had maybe 6 or 7 vehicles. A couple of 18-wheelers parked in the back, their drivers probably sleeping in their cabs. A few passenger cars scattered around, and one vehicle that caught my attention. It was a dark SUV parked at the far end of the lot, facing the McDonald's entrance. I noticed it because the driver was sitting inside with the engine running. I could see the exhaust coming from the tailpipe and the faint glow of a phone screen illuminating someone's face behind the wheel. I did not think much of it at the time. People do all kinds of things in parking lots at night. Maybe they were waiting for someone. Maybe they were on a phone call. I was too tired to care. I went inside and ordered a large coffee and a breakfast sandwich, something to give me fuel for the next few hours. The restaurant was nearly empty. Just me, a trucker, eating at one of the tables, and 2 employees behind the counter who looked as tired as I felt. I sat at a booth near the window facing the parking lot and ate my sandwich. I was scrolling through my phone, checking messages from my sister about my father's condition when I happened to glance up at the parking lot. The SUV had moved. It was no longer at the far end of the lot. It was now parked directly behind my car, blocking me in. The engine was still running, but now the headlights were on, pointing at the back of my vehicle. My stomach tightened. That was not a coincidence. There was plenty of open space in that parking lot. Whoever was in that SUV had deliberately moved to block my car. I watched through the window waiting to see what would happen. For about a minute, nothing did. The SUV just sat there, headlights glaring, engine running. Then the driver's door opened and a man got out. He was big. That was the first thing I noticed. Tall and broad, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. He stood beside his SUV for a moment, looking at my car, then started walking toward the McDonald's entrance. Every instinct in my body told me something was wrong. I grabbed my phone and moved away from the window toward the back of the restaurant, where I would be less visible from outside. The man walked in through the front door. He stood there for a moment scanning the restaurant, his eyes moving from the trucker to the employees to me. When his gaze landed on me, it stayed there. He walked to the counter and ordered something I do not remember what. But even while he was ordering, he kept glancing back at me. Short looks, just a second or 2 each, but deliberate. He was watching me. I texted my sister. I told her where I was, the name of the truck stop, the exit number. I told her something felt wrong, and if she did not hear from me in 20 minutes, to call the police. The man got his food and sat down at a table between me and the exit. There was no way I could leave without walking past him. I sat there for about 10 minutes, pretending to be on my phone, trying to figure out my options. The trucker finished his meal and left. Now it was just me, the man, and the 2 employees in the back. I decided to approach the counter. I asked one of the employees, a young woman who looked barely 20, if there was a back exit I could use. She looked confused and asked why. I lowered my voice and told her there was a man in the restaurant who had blocked my car and was watching me. I told her I felt unsafe. Her expression changed. She glanced at the man, then back at me. She said yes, There was a back exit through the kitchen, and she would let me through. I followed her through the kitchen and out a door that led to the side of the building. From there, I could see the parking lot, but I was not visible from inside the restaurant. My car was still blocked by the SUV, but the SUV driver was inside. If I was fast, I might be able to get in my car and maneuver around his vehicle before he realized I was gone. I walked quickly across the parking lot, staying close to the other parked cars for cover. I reached my car, unlocked it, got in, started the engine. I was backing out of the space when I saw him. He had come out of the restaurant and was running across the parking lot toward me. Running fast, his face twisted with anger or frustration or something else I could not identify. I floored it. My car shot backward. Then I threw it into drive and swung around the SUV, my tires squealing on the asphalt. I headed for the exit, checking my rearview mirror constantly. He did not try to follow in his SUV. He just stood there in the parking lot watching me drive away. I could see his silhouette in my headlights getting smaller as I pulled back onto the highway. I drove for 2 hours without stopping, my heart pounding the whole time, checking my mirrors every few seconds to make sure no headlights were following me. I called my sister and told her what happened. She wanted me to call the police, but I did not know what I would report. A man looked at me weird in a McDonald's. He parked behind my car. Nothing technically criminal had happened. I made it to Dallas by morning running on adrenaline instead of sleep. My father was stable, still, in critical condition, but expected to recover. I stayed for a week before driving back to Phoenix. For months afterward, I wondered about that night. Who was that man? What did he want? What would have happened if I had walked past him to leave through the front door instead of asking for the back exit? About 6 months later, I got my answer. Sort of. I was scrolling through the news one night, and I saw a story about an arrest at a truck stop in New Mexico. A man had been attacking solo travelers on remote stretches of the interstate, following them to rest stops and truck stops, then robbing them. In 2 cases, the victims had been found dead. The photo of the suspect looked familiar. Big guy, dark jacket. I cannot be 100% certain it was the same person, but the location was right. The timing was right. The description was right. I think about that night a lot. I think about how tired I was, how vulnerable I was, how easy it would have been for something terrible to happen. I think about the employee who let me through the kitchen, who probably saved my life by giving me a way out. And I think about all the other people driving alone at night, stopping at truck stops and rest areas, not realizing that someone might be watching them, selecting them, waiting for the right moment. If you travel alone at night, please be careful. Pay attention to the vehicles around you. Notice when something seems wrong. Trust your instincts. And do not be afraid to ask for help, to ask for a back exit, to do whatever you need to do to get to safety. Because the highway at night is full of predators. And sometimes the only thing standing between you and them is your own awareness. Story 4. The Delivery. My name is Winston, and I was 33 years old when this happened. I was a delivery driver for one of those food delivery apps, and I had picked up an order from a McDonald's in Orlando, Florida, around 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night. The delivery address was in a residential area about 15 minutes away, a house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. When I arrived and approached the front door, something felt wrong. The house was dark, no porch light, no signs of anyone waiting for food. But the delivery instructions were specific. Bring to door. Do not knock. Leave on porch. I should have listened to my instincts and left the food on the sidewalk. Instead, I walked up to that dark porch, and I almost did not walk away. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this story is a warning to anyone who does delivery work. I had been doing delivery driving for about a year and a half as a side gig, mostly evenings and weekends, to supplement my regular job. The work was simple. Pick up food, deliver food, collect tips. Most nights were uneventful. Occasionally, you got a difficult customer or a confusing address, but nothing serious. The McDonald's order came through around 9:15. 2 meals, drinks, standard stuff. I picked it up and started driving to the delivery address, a house in a neighborhood I was not familiar with. The area got darker as I drove fewer streetlights. More trees, the kind of suburban sprawl where each house sat on a large lot with plenty of space between neighbors. The house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, which meant I had to drive past all the other houses to reach it. As I got closer, I noticed that this house was different from its neighbors. The others had porch lights on cars in driveway signs of life. This one was completely dark. No lights in the windows, no porch light, no car visible in the driveway. I parked on the street and checked the delivery instructions again. Bring to door. Do not knock. Leave on porch. No other information. The customer name was just initials. No full name. Something about it felt off. But I had delivered to dark houses before. Some people go to bed early. Some people do not like porch lights. I told myself I was being paranoid. I grabbed the food and walked up the driveway. It was long, maybe 40 feet, leading to a house that sat back from the street. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt. The yard was overgrown, the bushes untrimmed the whole property, giving off a neglected vibe that did not match the well-maintained homes around it. I reached the porch, 3 steps up to a small landing with a door. Still no lights. I could not see anything through the windows, no glow from a TV, no phone screen, nothing. I set the food down on the porch as instructed. I was about to turn and leave when I heard something. A voice, coming from inside the house. Low, muffled, but definitely a voice. I could not make out the words. Then I heard another sound. A thump, like something heavy hitting the floor. I froze. My instincts were screaming at me to run, but I was caught between fear and the possibility that someone inside needed help. Maybe someone had fallen. Maybe someone was hurt. I knocked on the door. I know the instructions said not to knock, but I had heard something, and I needed to know if someone was okay. No response. Just silence. I knocked again, louder. I called out, asked if anyone was there, asked if everything was all right. This time I heard movement. Footsteps approaching the door. Slow footsteps, deliberate, getting closer. The door opened. Not all the way. Just a crack, maybe 6 inches, with a security chain still attached. Through the gap, I could see a face. A man, maybe mid-50s, with a thin face and eyes that reflected the faint light from the street behind me. He asked if I was the delivery driver. His voice was flat and motionless. I said yes, that I had left the food on the porch. He looked down at the bag, then back at me. He asked me if I wanted to come inside. He said he had something for me, a tip. Every alarm in my body was going off. The dark house, the strange instructions, the sounds I had heard inside, and now this invitation. Everything about this was wrong. I said no thank you that I had to get to my next delivery. I started backing down the porch steps. He asked me again. More insistent this time. He said he had cash, that it was a big tip, that I should come in and get it. I said no. I turned and walked quickly down the driveway, fighting the urge to run. Behind me, I heard the door open wider. I heard him step out onto the porch. He called after me, his voice no longer flat. Now there was something else in it. Frustration. Anger. He said I should not be rude. He said he was trying to give me something. He said I should come back. I did not look back. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away as fast as I could without squealing my tires. As I pulled out of the cul-de-sac, I looked in my rearview mirror. He was standing at the end of his driveway watching my car leave. Just standing there in the dark, watching. I pulled over about a mile away, hands shaking, heart racing. I opened the delivery app to mark the order as complete and saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a note from the customer, added after I had picked up the order, but before I arrived. I had not seen it because I do not check for updates while driving. The note said, "Make sure you come inside. I have something special for you." I called the police. I gave them the address, told them what happened, told them about the sounds I heard inside the house. They said they would send someone to check it out. I found out what they discovered about a week later when a detective called me for a follow-up interview. The house had been vacant for 2 months. The previous owner had died, and it was tied up in probate. Nobody was supposed to be living there, but someone had been. When the police entered the house, they found evidence that someone had been staying there illegally. Sleeping bags, food wrappers, personal items. They also found other things. Duct tape, rope, a camera on a tripod set up in the basement. And they found a delivery history, not just my order. The person staying in that house had been placing delivery orders for weeks. Different apps, different restaurants, different drivers, all with the same instructions. Bring to door. Do not knock. Leave on porch. But I was the first one who knocked. The first one who almost went inside. The man was never caught. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. They're still looking for him as far as I know. The detective told me to be careful, to watch my surroundings, to never go inside a customer's home no matter what. I stopped doing delivery driving after that. The money was not worth it. Every time I approached a dark house, every time I got delivery instructions that seemed a little too specific, I would think about that night. That face in the crack of the door. That voice asking me to come inside. I think about all the delivery drivers out there walking up to strangers' houses multiple times every night, trusting that the people on the other side of those doors are just hungry customers, and not something else entirely. Most of the time they are. Most of the time it is just a normal person ordering dinner. But sometimes it is not. Sometimes the person placing the order is not interested in the food at all. They are interested in who brings it. If you do delivery work, please be careful. Do not go inside houses. Do not ignore your instincts when something feels wrong. And if someone asks you to come inside for any reason, say no. Walk away. Drive away. Get to safety. Because you never know what is waiting on the other side of that door. And some tips are not worth what they cost. Those were 4 true creepy McDonald's stories. McDonald's restaurants are everywhere on every highway in every town, open at all hours, serving millions of people every day. We think of them as safe, familiar, ordinary places. Golden arches that mean the same thing, whether you're in Kansas or California. But, as these stories show, ordinary places can hide extraordinary dangers. The PlayPlace, where children climb and play while predators wait inside the tubes. The overnight shift, where desperate people come looking for help and dangerous people come looking for victims. The highway stops, where travelers are vulnerable and hunters are watching. The delivery apps that bring strangers to doors that should never be opened. Pay attention. Trust your instincts. Look out for each other. Because sometimes the scariest places are not dark alleys or abandoned buildings. Sometimes they are the bright, familiar franchise locations where we let our guard down because we think we know what to expect.